Welcome to People Love Process. This content is going to be a little different than my normal deconstructed process. We're going to focus on 5 categories covering essential tools, functionality, tips, tricks, plugins, and resources to improve your vector building experience. Now, I've set up those 5 categories as chapter breaks in this movie. So each category you can easily isolate and watch at your own pace. That way we don't need to rush it. Now, some of the content, not all of it, just a few things, have appeared in previous movies, and that is because I originally developed this for a How Design Live presentation that I gave, but I was limited to only 45 minutes. And let's just say, as I was doing that session, Illustrator decided to stop working during that time. So this recording is how I intended it to be. And if you attended my session at How, just email me using the address in the description below this movie, and I'll provide the exercise files to you for free. We have a lot to cover, so let's dive right into it. So the first category I want to go over is keyboard shortcuts and actions. And let's dive into it. Now, to use keyboard shortcuts, you need to turn on something in your OS, and you would just have to enable it on the Mac. If you're using an older Mac OS, you would just go to keyboard under your settings, and you would toggle on the use F1, F2, etc. keys as standard function keys. If you're using a newer Mac OS, Sonoma or above, then you're going to go to the side menu to keyboard. Then you're going to have to click on keyboard shortcuts, and then this window will pop up, and you'll have to enable the function keys here by sliding it to the right to turn on. So you have to have that enabled in order to use F keys on your keyboard as one button pushes that you can program. So I just wanted to show you that. Let's jump into the first one, and the first one is the keyboard shortcut I want to show you. It's kind of ironic because I've been using Adobe Illustrator for 22 years now. Prior to that, I used Macromedia Freehand for 15 years. So when I moved to Illustrator, I had to learn all new stuff. There wasn't a lot in common with freehand. And one of the learning curves was learning all the commands. Well, some of them are easy, like group, Command G, that's a no-brainer. So I didn't have a problem remembering those, but other ones, it was obscure key commands, and I could never remember them. And then I discovered keyboard shortcuts, and I've been using many of these for well over 20 years now because I could record my own keyboard shortcut. Now, if you go up here to edit, and you go all the way down, you'll see keyboard shortcuts. If we go ahead and open that up, you can see I have my keyboard shortcuts saved under what I call GS commands. That's because I've customized them. Well, if you have to go to a pull-down menu, that always takes longer. So you would go under here, and you go to menu commands, and these are the menu commands. Now, the one I'm going to show you first is the clipping mask. For a clipping mask, you go to Object, and then you pull down to the bottom here to Clipping Mask. So it will be under Object here. And then if we just scroll down here, further down, there it is, Clipping Mask. We'll go ahead and toggle that, and you can see Make Clipping Mask. This was an obscure command that I could never remember. So I just clicked on it and assigned it, and hit the F1 key to assign it the F1 key. That was to make a clipping mask, and to release a clipping mask, and made this one F2. Now, this is how you can customize. So if you find yourself going to pull down menus to certain functions, those are great candidates for turning them into one button pushes. That's what I want to demonstrate. But after you customize this, you'll want to save it by clicking this icon. I name mine GS Commands, and that gets saved wherever you want on your hard drive. So I just wanted to show you where those are and how you can customize them. Now, these are all menu commands. You can also do the tool commands. I tend not to mess with those. Like Command J or Command A, those bring you to specific tools, or like if it's eyedropper tool, Command I. So I leave those alone, but the menu commands saves a lot of time. I just wanted to show you that. That's where you do it. The first one I want to go over is my F1 key. This is to make clipping knots. Now, the ironic thing here is I'm going to choose 2 other keyboard shortcuts because I'm going to select this, and I want to make a copy of it because I want to use the same shape to mask the artwork that's on top of this background shape. And so I'm just going to hit F3. What does the F3 key do? That clones. When I move, that was the first one I ever made in Macromedia Freehand. You could clone objects. It'd just make a copy and bring it to the front. So if I go ahead and move this, you can see it just made a copy. But I had to do this, and I'll show you this in just a little bit. We're only on F1. But I had to ironically use a keyboard shortcut to demonstrate this. Now with the copy of this, I'll select my artwork here, and then I'm going to just hit F1. We'll mask it. And that just saves time. I don't have to go down to a pull-down menu. And of course, F2 is unmasked. So if I hit F2, it'll unmask it. Hit F1 again, it'll mask it. So that's an easy one. Let's jump to the next one here. The next one is a clone command. And it's exactly what I just said. And over here shows you that this F1, just hitting this button once, whatever I have selected, it's going to make a copy, Command C. It's going to go Command F, which is bring to front. And it's going to go Shift Command plus bracket. That's going to arrange it to the very, so it actually does 3 commands, 3 recorded actions, and it's applied to the F3 key. And I'm going to show you how to record an action like that shortly. But let's look at this art. If I'm working on detail here, let's say it's the eyes of the skull, and I zoom in here, I would select this, and I would hit F3 once and F3 again. On this one, I'll just color it blue so you can see the difference. I'll slide it up like this because all I'm doing is I'm going to select the 2 copies here. I'll use Pathfinder minus front like that. I'll hit I for the eyedropper. I'll sample my shading over here. I probably should have made another copy. I'll select this, make another clone. Then I'll just size this one down. I'll color this one white like that. And then I'll position that highlight where I want. You can see I have alignment guides turned on. I find those annoying. I forgot to turn those off after recording my last session. So I'm just going to go to Smart Guides and deactivate those because it always assumes you want to align with everything else in your desktop, and I rarely want to do that. So that's how I use clone. It just makes the process faster. I don't have to go to the pull down menu. I can focus on creating, and it works really good. So let's jump to the next one, and this is send to back. This is pretty easy. Let's say I wanted this bone behind the other bone. I can just hit F4 and it will push it back like that. F5 is bring to front. So let's decide I wanted to bring this one to front, then I could hit F5 to bring it back to front. So super simple. It saves time. Again, I don't have to go to the menu and go to arrange and tell it where to go. It's just a 1-button push. Let's jump to the next one. Now, the easiest of all key commands to memorize was group. If I select all this artwork like here and I go Command G, now it's a group, so I don't have to worry about it. I can move it around without parts falling off or whatever. So that was always easy to remember. What wasn't so easy was ungroup command. I could never remember it, so I'd always have to go to the pull-down menu. Well, now I don't. I just select something if it's group, and I hit F6, and now it's ungrouped again. So Not a very complex one, but something I use every single day, all day long. Let's jump to the next one. The next one is creating a compound path. Now, you might be going, well, why is this needed? Well, sometimes you'll have a shape like this, and we want to create a final motif for this logo direction down here. So if I select all of these, we'll just go ahead and I'll use a keyboard shortcut again. Option F1 is select all the same color. Again, avoiding having to go to selection, pull down to select all the same color. It's just super fast this way. Now, if I select this and I go to Pathfinder and I go Unite, like that, you can see it's united this shape now. So if I select it, it's going to act like a group. And if you go to the appearance, you'll see it is a group. Now, if I leave this as is and I take this to cut it in half, and I'll select both shapes now, and I'll go minus front like this, you'll run into that. Well, this is pretty obvious that it destroyed your art. You wouldn't not miss this. But sometimes when you're using Pathfinder, you might be zoomed in on something when you do it, and you won't notice something that falls out. This one's pretty obvious. But this happens all the time, and it's expected behavior according to Adobe engineers. So to avoid that, I, years ago, set up my F7 key so I can select this, because every time you use Pathfinder methods, it reverts to a group nature. So watch this appearance panel here. If I hit F7, it'll turn it into a compound path. So now if I take this shape and go minus front to cut through it, it behaves the way you would expect it to behave. Now, Adobe says the other method is expected behavior. I disagree with them because this confuses both pro users and new users of Adobe Illustrator. But every time, whether it's unite, minus front, intersect, whatever one of the shape modes you're using on Pathfinder, it's going to revert back to a group nature. So this is why I also have the F7 key, because I can just hit that. It turns it in to the correct one. I can sample a color here. I can go ahead and clone this again using the previous keyboard shortcut. Go to the reflect tool, find a central anchor point. I have smart guides turned on, Command U, so I know where that is. And then I can sample the other color. So that's how I use it in the midst of creating artwork. Now, some of the keyboard shortcuts are just things I've ran into over the years. And I go, you know what? I keep doing this, so maybe this would be a good keyboard shortcut. And I kept adding to my F key, so much so that I now use kind of a separate little keypad made by Elgato that has programmable buttons on it where I continue setting up new ones as I have need of them. Now, on something like this, if you're working in Illustrator and you have artwork selected, you want to deselect it, you can just click on the background to deselect it. But at times, you might be doing detail. Let's say you're going to do detail here on the nose, and we go over here and there's the blob brush. So we can pick some color over here, and I want to create this like this to get the shading for this nose like that. At some point, I'll do a blob brush movie on my YouTube channel. So I'd select it like that. Select this one. Once again, we're using keyboard shortcuts. F3 to clone it. Select this and go intersect wherever it overlaps. I sample this. And now if I want to deselect, well, if I click on another object, I just have this brown selected here. So I set up a keyboard shortcut that's just F8, and it deselects everything so I don't accidentally move something. So that's how I utilize that keyboard shortcut. Let's jump to another one. Certain functions such as Pathfinder, I use quite a bit. So anytime I'm going to be using it a lot, I decide maybe I should set up a keyboard shortcut. So what I've done is I've created my own punch command. Now, when I used Macromedia Freehand for 15 years, they call, in Adobe Illustrator, it's called minus front. You can tell an engineer named it minus front. That doesn't even make sense when you actually think about it. But in Macromedia Freehand, they referred to that functionality as punch, which makes sense. It's like you're punching through the bottom shape with the top shape. So I can select detail like this. And if you look at the appearance panel, notice this is a compound path. And if I select the mask artwork here, that's a compound path. So with both of these selected, I can just hit the F9 key and it runs that command. Now, if you look at the appearance palette, it not only does the Pathfinder subtract, it makes a compound path, so it retains that compound nature, which is kind of cool. And at one point, I talked to Adobe engineers, just make compounds the default that state that the vector art remains in, and they did. And then all of the evangelists who make a living by teaching all the various functionality of Illustrator, they whined about that for whatever reason. And so Illustrator switched it back. And to this day, it still confounds so many people. So I can take another shape like this, bring it over. Maybe I want to put detail on the nose, select these two. And again, I can just hit F7. And boom, it's still a compound because I built that into my keyboard shortcut. And this, again, is a recorded action. I just recorded an action where I did a Pathfinder minus front or subtract, and then ran a make compound path command on it to build artwork like this a lot faster than just doing it natively, as Illustrator calls it, expected behavior, which is really frustrating. They say that because it just shows they don't use their own features. Let's go ahead and turn this on. Here's another one, the place command, which is found under File. You can see place here. For years, you couldn't program this to be a keyboard shortcut. Well, now you can. So all I do is I just hit F10 and it takes me to, I can go to the desktop, select a texture in this case, click place. When you place an Illustrator, it places from the top left coordinate down, so I can place it here like that. I can adjust the size if I don't want it this big. Position it over my artwork. This is a bitmap TIFF, and bitmap TIFFs in Adobe Illustrator are great because the white pixels are transparent and the black pixels you can color. So we'll color this white, and now we got a nice distressed looking design going on here. So place is something I use all the time for keyboard shortcuts. That way I don't have to go to the menu. If you're working on a composition and you have a color you don't like, if you have a swatch set up as a global color, and if you look at my palette over here, my swatches palette, all of the swatches with the white triangle in the bottom right denote a global color. So I could click into any of those global colors, just change the break of that color within swatches, and it would redistribute everywhere it's used in my design. But sometimes you might create a color by going to the color palette and mixing it, but you never create a swatch, but you color your artwork with it. So I try to avoid that, but let's say you accidentally do it like we did with this yellow. I can hold down Option and then hit F1, and it will select all the same color. Now that's a lot faster, just going Option F1, hitting that color, and I decide, I think this would look better if I color it more of an orangish yellow like that. Well, that's a lot easier than selecting a color and going up here to select, going down to same, then going over and going fill color. Notice my Option F1. It's a lot faster than pull down menus. And that's anything you do on a regular basis is a good candidate for a keyboard shortcut. Let's look at another one that's similar to this, and this is Option F2. What do I use Option F2 for? Well, I might select, maybe it's part of this vine like this, and this vine is a brown, and, I guess a vine will become brown once it, dies. It might look better green. So I'll select this and I'll go Option F2, and that selects all the same stroke color. And then I can go over here and determine maybe it's a nice dark green we apply to it, and it just makes the process go a lot faster. Now, after COVID, the next year after COVID, I wanted to do something as a creative, kind of a creative experiment of my own. And so every year for the entire next year, I create at least one of these a day. I called this Modern Culture. The themes are all over the map. They're goofy, they're strange. They're based off of everything from mythology to lore to favorite pets to just anything crazy and fun. But I use the same principle on each, the exact same tolerances of stroke thicknesses, the same proportions. Everything's a square proportion. And over the course of a year, I created 374 of those. You can find some of the time-lapse movies on my YouTube channel. And in the process of creating these, I was about, 20-some into it. And I keep doing the same thing. And this is the size that I build at. So it's pretty small. I would start with. So what we're going to do, we're going to go up to the window. I'm going to go to the actions, and I'm going to bring that up. Where did it bring it up? Oops, looks like I must have it already in here. Let's move this up a bit. There we go. We have actions here. I'll drag it over here. And many times when you look at the action palette, you're going to see what you see here. And you have default actions. I have some isometric ones. We're not covering that. And reverse projection is another isometric one I created. I'm going to focus on GS actions. These are all custom actions I created. Here's the punch one. Here's the clone one that I created. And all these you can see are applied to punch is the F9 key. The clone key is F3. Option F3 to offset. This is something I do quite a bit. So what we want to do is we want to create a keyboard shortcut that will help our creative process. So how do you do that? Well, you go to the option menu on the actions palette here, and we're going to do a new action. Let's see, we're going to do, we'll do a new action. We'll open that up. We'll name it. I'll just name this one. Let's see. We'll just call it process for lack of creativity. And I like to color mine red. You can color them whatever you want, but I think red's nice. And on the function key, now I have a lot of function keys going, so I'm going to pick one that I don't use a lot because I don't want to mess up my existing functionality. And let's say we'll hit the shift key or maybe the command key. Let's try a different one. I think I have that applied already, so it's not. There we go. So we'll do shift F11. That'll be the keyboard shortcut to get this, this keyboard shortcut going. And so we're going to record. And the first thing I want to do is select my path here. Let's go ahead and open up the swatches palette a little bit. And on this, I want to go ahead and color it black like that. Next thing I want to do is I want to scale it. And so I'm going to double click this and we'll go 200% like that. Then let's go to stroke. I want to make this stroke exactly 8 points. And I want to make sure it has rounded corners here like that. So that looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and outline the stroke. So I'll go to Object Path, Outline Stroke. And by the way, I should point out, not every pull-down menu is recordable. That one is. So we'll outline the stroke. And then, even though I really don't have art that needs it, I'm going to go ahead and click the Unite on Pathfinder. and I'll click that. And if we look at under process, you can see everything it's done here. We're done recording, so I'm going to click on the stop key like that. And by the way, you'll want to save this. And you'd want to save this. It's part of our GS actions. So I'd select this, go here, and I would go down to save actions. And wherever you save those, you'll do that. I'm not going to bother to do that on this one, but you do want to save it because the next time you open up Illustrator, if you don't, you won't have that recorded action. So I just wanted to call that out. Let's go back to layers now, and we can turn off this layer, turn on this layer, and we'll just test it. And by the way, you're probably more used to seeing actions kind of displayed as it's shown here, where it's just this line item. Here's something a lot of people don't realize, and I found this out when I worked at Upper Deck, and a friend of mine, I walk in, and he goes, oh, just go to actions. Well, his actions look like this. Well, what is this? Well, this is button mode. Well, what's button mode? Well, here's the process one. You can just click it once. So if I select this art and I click process, boom, done. And that goes pretty fast. So why am I showing you this? Because after drawing out a sketch like this, let's go ahead and move this over a little bit, and building the artwork, I like what it looks like, but then getting it to the next stage where I had to color the strokes black, blow it up 200%, clean up the artwork. Well, I could just select all of this, and I could just simply hit one button, boom. I have the clean artwork. So once I have the clean black and white, I can go ahead and colorize it and get my final artwork. So that's pretty cool. So that's how I use keyboard shortcuts, and that's how I use recorded actions combined with keyboard shortcuts to make the creative process go faster and be a lot easier and efficient with my time creating. So I just wanted to show you this as the first category of this content, because everything that follows, just know I'm using those keyboard shortcuts all the time, and it saves so much time. And if you think about it, I've been using these for 22 years now. I wish I could add up how much time it saved me not having to go to the menu option to select it. So let's go ahead and jump to the next category. The next category I want to go over is core tools. And this is obviously better shown than explained. So we're going to jump into this sketch. And I always try to work out what I'm going to create before I jump on Illustrator to try to create it. This is a lion head graphic. And what I want to show you here is what I call freeform building. Now, that's just how I choose to label it. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this area here of this part of the main, because whenever I create, I always try to focus on creating with shapes and not trying to build everything with one singular shape. So I break it down into simplified shapes. And so what I'm going to show you is how I go about creating a freeform shape like this. I usually start wherever it comes to a point, gets a point. We'll start here as the point. And then as it goes along this arch, I probably wouldn't want to go all the way to this point and try to create that curve, because that's a lot of information for one single curve. So I'll figure out where it makes sense to, maybe I decide I'm going to put it here, and I create and I start pulling it out. And then I realize, oh, you know what? I should have put it further along. Well, normally I would just let go, Command Z, try it again. Well, here's what you can do without letting go of your mouse like this. With your free hand, hold down the Shift key, and then you can reposition this anchor point before you commit to it. And I think it'd be better right about there. Let go of the space bar key. I think I might have said Shift. I meant space bar. Let go of the space bar, and now it's locked into that position. I never try to get the full curve. I just pull the handles out so I can access them like that. I think the stroke's a little thick. Let's go ahead and lighten this down to like 0.5. And then wherever it comes to point, gets a point. Those are easy to discern. And when it's a subtle S curve on its side, You don't even need anything in between. We'll go right to the point, wherever it gets to point, wherever it comes to point, gets a point. And then this one, I think I'm going to use the same tactic of putting it right here. But let's say you decide you're going to try it here. And again, you hold the space bar down and you can move it into the correct position. Let go of the space bar. That way you don't have to do any step backwards to recreate. Wherever it comes to point, gets a point. And this is a subtle curve. We'll go all the way over here, and then I'll close the shape kind of like that. So this is what I call a rough build. Then I'll go back with the anchor point tool here. This allows you to just grab a path, and I usually move it to get access to the handles. Then I'll finesse my Bezier curves with the Bezier handles. By the way, Pierre Bezier was named after him. He was an engineer at Renault and came up with Bezier curves in order to improve the car styling for Renault back in the day, so it wasn't all boxy. Now, here's a plugin. Now, I'm just showing you plugins because I use these every day because they're awesome. PathScribe is part of VectorScribe plugin. Notice when I have their tool selected here, this tool is called the PathScribe tool. You get all 4 of these, and within these are even more tools underneath them. But notice these white nodes that appear. These are called ghost handles. What are ghost handles? Well, it gives you access to the Bezier curve. You can just grab a ghost handle and pull it out like that. It's awesome. You grab this one, pull it out like this to start the path shaping down there, and then we'll finesse it here, kind of like that. Let's go back. And this is where I really obsess over getting it. And notice how it's trying to snap. That's because I have smart guides turned on. It's best, I've found, when doing freeform building to go Command U to turn that off. That way it won't snap and it gets more fluid, and you're going to get more organic shapes because the snapping just assumes you want to snap. It's not you telling it to. Like that. We'll go down here, grab a ghost handle. Ghost handle, not only do I think the name's just a really cool name, the functionality, it's so intuitive and actually works better than the native features such as the anchor point tool, like that. And that's how I'd finesse a shape like that. So that spacebar tool, one day on Twitter years ago, we decided, me and a bunch of other designer friends, we're going to share tips and tricks on Illustrator. And I decided to contact Niraj, who was an engineer on the AI team at the time, and I said, hey, Niraj, we're doing this. Do you want to share some of those tips that you might have? And he says, well, I have one I want to share with you. It's called the space feature. And I go, what's that? And he showed me the space bar thing, and all of us, our jaws drop. We're going, really? I've been using Illustrator at that time 15 years. I never knew that existed. And spacebar trick, give it a shot. Works on other things too, not just the pen tool. But as I was saying, when I create like this, I build in shapes. So here's this shape over here, and I already fused all the most of the shapes that make up the main, but you can see all the different pieces. Then I'll just reflect it in order to get my final design that looks like this. So when you're creating an Illustrator, you can use the pen tool. That's what most people think of when they create an Illustrator, because you can do free-form shapes. But many things can be built if you think in shapes and use a shape building method. So let's turn this on. And here's a bunch of shapes. And I want to show you the shape building tool. Now, keep in mind the shape building tool is like baking a cake. If you're going to bake a cake, you need all the ingredients figured out ahead of time. And I find the shape building tool isn't necessarily faster than the Pathfinder. I find the Pathfinder actually faster, but for certain styles, it's awesome for. And those are there's 2 that I'm going to show you here. The first one is this one. We're going to do something that seems a little unintuitive. I'm just going to go ahead and select this art on the owl. Let's adjust this so I can access my swatches here. And we're going to get rid of the stroke, and we're going to just fill all of this with black. Well, why'd I do that? Let's go ahead and zoom in on this so you can see it better. There we go. I'm going to go back to the shape building tool, which is this one right here, right under the width tool above it. I'll select it. As you go over a segment, it'll highlight that segment and it'll put a plus sign next to a cursor. That means add to shape. So any areas you drag over, they'll all get united together or added together. So I'm just going to drag this over the shapes I want to combine together like these. Like that. We'll go down here into the body. I'll do that like this. And then if I hold the Option key, actually, let's do the eyeballs here, the pupils. And then if you want to do the opposite, which is remove, not add, you hold Option down, changes to a minus. And this is where I want this to knock out. I want this to knock out. I want that. And we want that to knock out. You can also drag it like that to make it go a little faster. The beak area, the feathers here, and then I'll just let go of Option and it'll divert back to the plus symbol. And then I'll just drag through these areas because I want to unite those. Hold Option down again to get the feet of the bird here like this. We'll combine the wing on the right and the wing on the left, and then we'll minus these here. So this is what, to do kind of a positive negative approach like this, using the shape building tool, it goes really fast and it's really precise. If you tried to do this with Pathfinder, it'd be more of a hassle to do it. So in this respect, this is one style that's ideal for it. Another style, if I turn on this artwork here, let's say we create kind of this plant illustration. Let's zoom in on this like that. This looks cool, but I don't want all these paths that are out here. And before there was the shape building tool, you would have to select something like this. You'd have to go over here, grab the scissor tool. You'd have to turn on smart guides so it'd tell you when they're intersecting. Then you could click it. Then you'd have to select a segment and delete it like that. You could do it, it just took a lot longer. And with the shape building tool, I can select everything, go to the shape building tool. I'm going to hold minus down because I want it to remove, and I'll just drag through all these areas that go outside the area I want it to, like this. And we're using the lasso tool to drag over these like that. Then I'll go all the way over here. And I'll drag through these like this, like that, and boom, you have all of them done. Now we have one on the interior, so I'll just click, make sure I click on that. I didn't. Let's do it again. We'll select this shape. I'll select this shape. We'll go to the shape building tool. Maybe we should zoom in. There we go. And then I can highlight just this section and delete it like that. So for something like this, it works great for doing stroke-based artwork. Now, obviously, on something like that, eventually, I would probably color this black. I might beef it up, to whatever thickness I want, something like that. And then expand it and fill it and color it. But I'm going to cheat and just turn on our final cooked product like that. But that's how the shape building tool can assist, whether you're doing a positive negative design, whether you're using strokes. It just speeds up the creative process. So let's jump to the next thing, and that is thinking in shapes. Turn that off. If you think in shapes, you can probably build most things a lot faster than going to the pen tool and just doing it manually. So if we're building this little turret icon, I might select this shape and I'll copy it. I use my keyboard shortcut like this. Actually, I might decide over here, somewhere there, select these two. And then I go, well, I want one in the middle, So where exactly would this be? Well, you can eyeball it, and that looks close, but it's not perfect. Well, this is where I would just select 3 shapes. I go to the alignment tool, go down to the bottom here, and it'll figure out the exact alignment. I just click it, and it puts it right in the center. If I select these, group and select the bottom shape, I can focus on it and make sure it's aligned with that, and it is, so that's going to work good. And then I can go ahead and select this, and this is where the keyboard shortcuts come in. I make another clone of it. I'll just go ahead and rotate it, snap it there. That's where the Smart Guides comes in to snap. I can select all these. Now, one thing you might run into, if I select all of these and I go ahead and go to Pathfinder and I go Unite, notice how it keeps all of these anchors. That's annoying. Well, let's undo that. Make sure you go into your Pathfinder palette under Options. We're going to go to Pathfinder Options and click on Remove Redundant Points. Now, will this remove redundant points on everything? No, you'll still get redundant points on curves or corners at times. So even though it says it removes it, it doesn't remove all of them. But for this type of purpose, it does. So we want to have it on by default. Click OK with all these selected. We'll go Unite, and then you won't get those extra anchor points there. Some shapes like this is pretty easy. We don't want the top to be square, so we'll use the corner widget to round those. But beforehand, I want to get the base of this turret kind of established, so I'm going to clone this shape again. I don't have to go up and grab the rectangle tool and create a new shape. And I'll just scale it up, holding Shift down, something like this, like that. Then I'll select this anchor and this anchor, and I'll go hit the S key, and then we'll just adjust it. It'll mirror that. We'll go up here, select these two, hit the S key. All the S key does is switch to the scale tool, and then you can adjust these going in to get that angle like that. I think that's fine. And then obviously on this one, we can just round that to get the top there. And to get exactly what we want, we just extend this path, make sure this is on top, select these two, and go minus front like this. If I turn on these shapes, these are the details here. And if I go to the strokes, you can see this is just 9 point. So what I can do at times is I'll just anchor it right there, and I'll create a shape. Don't want it that outline. We'll just do this outline. And then this is where the control bar comes in. It's really easy to go up here, and I'm going to tell it, okay, right here, the height of it is this. So I'm going to go 9 because I want it to match the tolerance and the kind of the brickwork we have going. I'll do that. So now I know it's 9. Then I'll put it here. I might just drag this up, select these two, and go minus front. That way I get that same tolerance gap in there. These are all strokes, so I'll go to Object, I'll go Path, I'll go to Outline Strokes. They become shapes. I'll unite them like this. We'll bring this to the front. And by the way, that bring to the front right there, let's undo that. This is just me hitting the F5 key because it's a lot faster and going to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. That's why keyboard shortcuts are vital. Select both these, go minus front, select all of these. And now if the icon is just a simple black and white icon, we have that create, oops, looks like that was on a different layer. Let's put that up there. So now you can see the final icon. So that's how I go about building. I combine with my keyboard shortcuts, makes the whole process go faster. Let's talk about building shapes, because at times when you create a shape, if it's at 90 degrees, it's always easier to create. So if I wanted this to extend over here to the right, I can just direct select these two anchors, drag it over, and snap it on that guide. That's easy. But if something's at an angle like this, even when the bounding box locks in, yes, the bounding box, if you pull it, it'll extend it to that angle, and I can snap it here, but it distorts the angle we have established at the end. And let's undo that. If I pull this way, notice it almost becomes a rectangle. It's distorting that angle, and as you go to the right, it gets more severe. like that. So what I've done over the years when I've needed to extend something at an angle, my workaround has always been adding an anchor to it. But I've seen too many people that handle it like this, and they don't realize they've changed that angle. So you don't want to do that. So how have I approached this? Well, at times when you rotate something, your bounding box won't even give you the ability to do that. It'll look like this. So what I usually do is I grab the Add Anchor tool, and I kind of look at this distance, and then I go right about there. I'll add an anchor. I'll select these with direct select. And because I have Smart Guides turned on, Command U, I can slide directly on this path. You can see how it's kind of snapping to it, and I'll go beyond that stroke, or beyond that guide like this. And then this is where I might even zoom in so I can see what I'm doing easier. And I'll just keep these anchors selected, then I'll drag it back until it snaps right there on that. Now, is it precise? Well, yeah, it's precise. But it's not very efficient, and it kind of goes slower. And so I want to show you a more efficient way to do it. Now, before I show you this, we need to go to Illustrator. We need to go to Preferences, and we're going to go to the Smart Guides, and we're going to turn on Alignment Guides and click OK. Let's go ahead and switch to this one here. So why am I showing you this? I just noticed I have an extra layer. So you know what we're going to do? We're just going to delete that because we don't need that. I'm going to select one of these anchors. And because I have the alignment guide selection turned on under Smart Guides, if I just start dragging this, it will retain that angle, and I can go all the way out until it hits. You know, if I go past it like that and I drag back like this, it retains that angle. Then I can select this one and I can just go Command D, and it does the exact same transformation on that anchor point. Now, you might be asking, well, why don't you just select both of them and do it? For whatever reason, it won't work. That's the part that's frustrating. If the people who developed Illustrator actually used Illustrator, yeah, that would make sense to do it that way. But for whatever reason, they decided it only works one anchor at a time, and to apply it to a different anchor, you just have to select that anchor and go Command D, which would duplicate that transformation. So I just wanted to show you that. Now, with this feature turned on, it's going to assume everything alignment guides turned on. It's going to assume every shape you have in your design and you go to move it, you want it to tell you when it's aligned with other shapes. And that's not the case. Let's take a look. It's obviously easier to build things at 90 degrees. So if we have this sketch and I'm building this, well, the alignment guides would help because I was building these angles just manually using that workaround where I add an extra anchor point. But on this one, we can go ahead and just move it over until it snaps right there. Then select this and go Command D. So that goes pretty quick. Now, a plugin I like using is it's called Dynamic Corners by Astute Graphics, because I can select this round that I have established. It knows what radius it is. Click it. That locks that in, and then I can apply it to this corner. That's why I love plugins. They give me more flexibility in my workflow. And this design, when it's all said and done, ended up looking like this. So if you're building at angles and you need to create a transform precisely, you might consider turning on alignment guides. I'll be honest, I still use my workaround most often because I either forget about the alignment guides feature, or it's not going to save me any more time doing it that way than having to go to the preference and turn it on to initialize it. I usually have it off because I don't like all these guides popping up saying, you're aligned to this, you're aligned to that. It assumes you want to align everything on your artboard with other shapes on your artboard, and that's not the case for me. I'll decide when that happens. So by default, I usually have it off. Let's jump to one last thing, and that's rotate. This function has been in Illustrator since day one, but a lot of people don't utilize it as efficiently as they could, in my opinion. So if I'm creating a design like this, I could create all these shapes, these stacked elliptical shapes. I could group it, and with Smart Guides turned on, I'll hover over this anchor. I'll put that anchor, snap it to the anchor here on the edge of this purple back shape here, and I'd select this. We're going to go over here to rotate. I'll focus the orientation of the rotation on this anchor, and then I'm going to go to the center anchor on the bottom and just go over until it snaps to that edge. You can also do it if you wanted to rotate it using this bottom anchor. Either or would give the same result like that. So you can see this bounding box is aligned with that angle, and this is going to benefit you. If you go to the center anchor here, and let's go ahead and zoom in so you can see this better. If you can go to the center anchor here and you hold the shift key down, it'll scale it proportionately at that angle like that. And I think that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and ungroup it because I want each of these to be able to be colored separately. So we'll select this shape, and I'm going to go ahead and make a copy. I'm going to make 5 copies of it. So we'll go 1. We'll color it that color. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just hitting my F3 key 5 times. Well, why'd I do that? Because I want to take this shape, select this, and we'll go minus front. We'll lop that off. I'll select this one. We'll do the next one. I'll select this one. We'll do the next one. This is where I kind of miss some features in freehand. In freehand, I could just take this one shape and take a number of independent shapes and cut through all of them with one foul swoop. It's like cutting a sandwich. It kind of behaved that way. And that really frustrated me when I moved to Illustrator because I lost that functionality. And then, of course, we could color these however we want. I think making that red like that. And so I just wanted to show you the simple ways to use the rotate tool, because a lot of people I found kind of make it harder for themselves. And the rotate tool, if you just think in shapes, think of angles, you can create a lot of things. So hopefully these were helpful. We're going to now jump to the next category and take you through even more cool tips and tricks. The next category I want to walk you through is just vector craftsmanship. So these are things that I do within the midst of creating vector artwork and design, just to button things up and make sure what I'm delivering is the best possible quality and craftsmanship of the art that it can be. So we're going to cover a bunch of different things in this category. We're going to start off with this fun little sketch of Mr. Hippo, and here's all my base artwork here. Now, when I'm creating, and you saw this in the recorded action part of this that I showed you previously, I'm going to expand all of these strokes. Now, the ones that aren't actually strokes are all the blue shapes. These are just elliptical shapes using the ellipse tool to create, but everything else that's strokes, we'll go ahead and select all of those because we're going to go to Object. And even though I have, if I go just to show you, if I go to the Pathfinder menu and we go to Pathfinder options, I have redundant points turned on to remove redundant points, but as you're going to see, they still get created when you shape build in Illustrator. This is one of the more frustrating aspects about Illustrator. I've been harping on the AI team for years to just fix this. You guys can fix it because there's plugins that can fix it, and I'm going to show you that too. And if they can figure out the math, so could Adobe. It's just nobody on the Adobe team actually uses the software they create. That's the problem, in my opinion. So we're going to select all these shapes. We're going to go to Object. We'll go to Path. By the way, I should point out, this is the way I always do it. I should probably create a keyboard shortcut because I do this a lot. So Once again, if you find yourself doing something a lot, create a keyboard shortcut. It makes the whole process go faster. We're going to go outline stroke. It will take all those strokes and it will create outlines. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to unite them. So it fuses all of those together. And I use plugins by Astute Graphics, such as PathScribe. And the PathScribe panel, notice what it has on there. It has this. This is saying, hey, you have redundant points showing up here. Do you want to remove them? So right now we have 159 anchor points. And this is saying you have some redundant points. And some of you might not really understand what a redundant point is. Think of one anchor point that you look at visually, and there's actually two there because the other one's piggybacking directly on top of it. Think of piggybacking, and that's what, maybe you don't know what piggybacking is. That's kind of a reference from growing up. But anyway, there's 159. If I click this, this will remove the whatever one. So let's see how many are in it. I'll click it. So there is 2 redundant points, not a lot. So that wasn't too bad. But this is one reason I use a plugin, because you don't know where those are. Illustrator won't tell you. And that's why plugins are so valuable. But let's hyper focus on Mr. Hippo's ear, because there's a lot of anchor points you don't need. So if I select this, you can see we have 2 anchor points here and one here. We don't really need those. So how do you remove them? Well, the Smart Remove feature in Adobe Illustrator, I wouldn't call it smart. It's like maybe a B- type of smart, not an A+ smart. What do I mean by that? Because it's not intuitive and it's not fast and it's kind of cumbersome in that you have to select an anchor point. Okay, well, that's not too hard. And you have to go to this tool, which is the Remove Anchor Point tool. But first you have to hold down the Shift key, and then you click it, and then you go over here and click the anchor, and it will Smart Remove. Well, that's not very intuitive, and that's not fast, and you can only do one at a time because this one is still here. So you would have to hold Shift key down with the same tool and click it to Smart Remove. Now, does it remove it in a good way to retain the continuity of your art? Yeah, it actually works pretty good there. And so that's what I will do to go into my artwork. So we'll select this one, go to the minus anchor point tool, hold the Shift key down, and it will remove our artwork like this. We'll clean up that one. So that works pretty good. But if we click on this, and I'm going to zoom into this area because notice we got all these anchors that added here, and that doesn't look very good at all. And I'm not even going to try well, let's go down here. Do we need this anchor? No. So if I select that one, I go minus, I hold Shift key down, and I go like this. Well, look at the angle. It ruined our art. If we go Command Z, like that. Well, how does the Astute Graphics plugin do it? Well, if I select this and go here, we can go Smart Remove using this. Doesn't affect the art at all. Not only that, I can select this conglomeration of anchors here and go Smart Remove, and boom. That is a true smart feature, and it's why I use Astute Graphics Vector Scribe plugin specifically, which has that Smart Remove feature within the PathScribe palette. So I just wanted to show you that, and I clean up the art, and you have to clean it up because, you know, you want Mr. Hippo happy. So let's jump to the next thing here. Sometimes when I'm building artwork like this, you might think, well, that'd be easy. Just create one path and make it really thick. And for the most part, I never do it that way because it doesn't work that way. And you would run into the same problem I'm going to demonstrate via the way I would build this. I would select this, and even though it's not a closed path, meaning it's just a stroke technically, I would select it, and I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to go to Offset Path, and I'm going to select this. We're using a tolerance of 18, like that. And notice it's going to truncate this in. So if you want that to actually build out the way you would expect it, you'd have to put out a large mitering like that. And notice how it just creates this. It's not following the geometry of this curve, but we'll go, okay, whatever. So I'll click OK. The next thing I'm going to do is, this is where I'll grab the scissor tool. I'm going to cut it here. And then we'll go down here and I'm going to go ahead and cut it here as well. We'll select the part we don't need, which is this, and I'll delete it. So you can see most of the profile of the back is fine, but as it gets down here and it's associated with the point of the original curve, it adds these anchors. And once it hits that point, instead of following the geometry of the curve, it just shoots out directly straight. It looks pretty bad. So how do I fix this? Well, this is how I fix it. And unfortunately, you'd have to eyeball all of this in Illustrator, but I use a plugin. But first, we'll go ahead and grab the scissor tool, because all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here, and I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to cut it here, select this part that looks lousy, delete it, and we're going to go to a plugin that's part of Vector Scribe right here called Extend Path Tool. And the Extend Path tool is awesome because it takes in mind this entire stroke and the geometry that's established up to this point, and then it just continues that geometry out like that. And so that even looks better than my drawing, because my drawing, I'm just kind of guesstimating. This is precise. So this will be exactly that 18 points. Then I can go down here and I can go to this path and I can extend that out. I'll cross that path like this. Then I'll go back to the anchor point tool. I'll close this shape like this. We'll close this shape here and we'll go up here. Notice those guides showing up. So we're going to go back into preferences to smart guides, and I'm going to turn off alignment guides. That's why by default, I usually have those off, because it's just, you want to align it with this, you want to align it with, no, I don't, stop showing me that. So this is the shape I would create. Now you're going, well, what about that? That's easy. Just hit Unite. Then you can direct select that shape. And then of course, as I'm creating, I use that same tolerance. So we'll use these to lop off the end of this shape we created like that. We'll go minus front. Now we have the same tolerance on everything. That's how I would focus and build a design like this. And again, I build it in pieces, and then ultimately the final design looks like this. This is was for an exploration for a company called Kangaroo Star. Apparently in that industry, they call executive assistants kangaroos because they can hop to it and get things done, apparently. That's kind of what I was told. So there you go. Let's jump to some of the simple mirroring effects in Illustrator. Now, one feature that's been in Illustrator a very long time, probably as long as Illustrator has been around, is if you go to Object, you can go to Path and you can go to Add Anchor Points. This will add one anchor point in between, in the exact middle of each side of this square. So if I turn it on, now instead of just having 4 anchor points, we have 8 anchor points because it placed this in the side. So why am I showing you this? Because there's some cool things you can do with mirroring. And so if you just think in shapes, if I select these 4 corners here, with those selected, I'll hit the S key again, and now I can mirror this effect like that. So maybe we're creating a shape that we're going to use on a, I don't know, maybe it's a security company badge, and I'm holding the Shift key down to lock this in. But if you let go of the Shift key, you know, you could get a shape like this. So that's how you can control that kind of mirroring to create shapes. So think in shapes, and then think of the mirroring effect. Once again, if we Command Z and we go back to what we originally had, we'll just select the corners again, just the 4 corners like this. And then as soon as those selected, hit the S key. And then with the cursor, because you're now on, if you look over here, the scale tool, just click and move like this. Now, if you want to retain the straightness or lock it into 90 degrees, just hold the shift key down and it will do that, and then you can adjust it like that. So that would be one way you can use it. Here's another way you can, let's say, actually, let's do that again. We're going to go to path. We're going to add some more anchor points, and this time we're going to select the ones that are in the middle of each path like that. We'll hit the S key, and then this is almost like the Budweiser brand mark like that. Oh, it looks like we only selected. Okay. Hit the S key. Maybe we go on the inside. Oh, see, make sure you select the anchors you want like this. You hit the S key and you actually take your time to select the anchor and then move it. Otherwise, it won't, it'll think you're trying to do something else. So whatever shape you want, maybe we select these two middle ones this way, hit the S key. And it's just an easier way to kind of think and create. That's kind of a cool shape. I kind of like this one too, like that. So I just wanted to show you that mirroring feature again. By the way, this works great if you're creating a badge, because many times I've created badges and they're just circles, but I want to create something that's circular, but not a perfect ellipse, not a perfect circle. And I think when it's a combination of a circle and square, they call it a squircle, something like that. Again, if we select these two anchors like this and we hit the S key, instead of going to the anchor itself, go to the handlebar, click and pull, and you can get an oblong kind of shape like this, which I really like these type of shapes. And again, if I drag it up like this, you can get an oval kind of like that, or you can go this way, or if you overlap, you can create kind of crazy shapes like this as well. So there's a lot you can do with this if you just kind of play with it. But in terms of creating an oval, this is a great way to create an imperfect elliptical shape that looks far more custom than just a standard oval. And I've been using this quite a bit to create badge designs like these. So that's something you can do. Let's go to the corner widget in Adobe Illustrator, because the corner widget, obviously, if you select these, it'll show up like this. So you can select these, you can pull this out. But then if you hit the up arrow keys, it'll go from the standard round, and then this will give you the nice bevel, and then this will give you the chamfered. So you could get almost a stop sign approach if you want, like that. So you don't have to do all the corners. So if you want to do two, you could go like this, get a shape like that, or maybe you want it to be kind of a shape like this. You can do the standard round or the chamfered. So it just depends what you want to create. That's how that works. Now, on a circle, if you select an anchor, you're not going to get any kind of controls, because Illustrator engineers are very literal when they think, well, that's not a corner, that's a smooth anchor, so we're not going to make it show up on that. Well, that's fine. But when you have secondary developers like Astute Graphics, they come up with dynamic corners. So if I select this shape and I go ahead and go to the dynamic corners tool, it will say, yes, this is a curve, but it doesn't have to be. We can remove that curve. And that's kind of cool, because maybe you want it a scale type shape like this. Or it's a tombstone if you flip it 180 degrees. So I just like having the flexibility of being able to grab a corner, and once I've created one, I can go to the next one and just tap it to get the exact same tolerance. It's very, very intuitive. All of their plugins are intuitive. So that's why I use both, actually. But one thing I do a lot is what I call subtle rounding. So if I have a element like this This isn't bad, but it's very sharp. These corners, vector art is hard edge and sharp, and I want to make this more human. So this is where I'll go to the dynamic corners instead of the corner widget, because the corner widget, you have to select every corner if you want all of them the same, and I don't always know what I want, so I'd have to undo it and try it again. Well, I can go to dynamic corners, go to one corner and go, okay, that looks good. So it remembers that setting, and I can go to the other corners and just click those corners and apply that same setting to them. And it's so intuitive, and it just makes this kind of subtle rounding and detailing look a lot better. And you can see how much more kind of not organic, but just human it looks. And you could even go to the extent, if you wanted to go in on corners like these. You could use the corner widget just to add little rounds here as well if you wanted to. So again, utilizing both these rounding features has just made creating vector art a lot easier for me, having both methodologies available to me via plugins by Astute Graphics. Now, there's times I've worked with Nike, and I've always thought Nike's logo was a great mark, but look at, you could poke your eye out with how sharp this is. This is where if I worked at Nike, I go, hey, let's just put some really subtle small rounds on that. I think that looks better. It's actually going to print better. And so when I create vector-based brand graphics specifically, let's go ahead and zoom out just a little bit here. You can see this one. This is for, I think it was Crescent Care. It was some exploration for a hospital down in Louisiana. If I grab the rounding tool, I can go in on this and I go, I think it looked better about right there. And then I can apply that same aesthetic to all of these really sharp rounds, and it just looks far more buttoned up like that. And as you're creating marks, you can always think how rounding could improve it. So yes, you can use the corner widget. These are pretty obvious. You'd want those rounded since they're fingers. And then maybe you've established the curve on these, so I can go in here, select that, and apply it to here like this. Go to this one and apply it to these like this. And that's how I use both functionality to add rounding to an overall design. Now, here's the crazy part about rounding. When you're approaching a design, you draw out a simple thumbnail sketch like this. You don't have to build the rounds. If you think in shapes and you think of the functionality you have available to you in Illustrator, I can build these straight. So all the spines on his back, these are just straight, a lot easier to create than trying to create all these little curves. It'd just take a lot longer. I could create something like this. I could go in here, select all these shapes like this, and we can use the corner widget, and I could just pull these in like this. And now I have all those shapes. Actually, let's go ahead and include this guy like this. And now all of these, now that I think about it, I want that one a little fatter. And that's one thing why I don't always use the corner widget. But if we do this, I think that looks great. The continuity is intact. If I go down here and I go like this, I'll add that kind of corner there. And then on this one's going to get crazy. I could just create that curve like that. I can select these. You know, I can go over here and go maybe a curve like that here, apply it there. Maybe we want a subtle curve here like that. We'll go back to the corner widget. We'll give them a nice bump there. And then not everything has to be 90 degrees like it was creating this one. If you angle it, then you'll get more of an angled curve, and that looks great at times. But this is how I would create a mark like this. I would take these shapes here, unite them, make sure they're on top of the other shape, select it, minus front, and this is how I would create a brand mark exploration for a project like this. And then I can further go into this if I want to, like on even these. I might think afterwards, you know what, these would look good with rounds, or maybe this one here. Select both those and add rounds in there as well. So rounding isn't just about rounding corners. If you think of it as a build device, it can help you solve a visual problem. You just want to think in shapes. Now, this was for a company called Rockfish Robotics. It's an engineer who codes for, in this case, it's going to be his next company he's creating is for agricultural robotics. Now, my favorite part of this design, it's the bubbles. I thought that was kind of a fun way to handle it. So let's go ahead and jump to the next category, and I'll walk you through that. The next category I want to go over, we're going to cover repeats, effects, mirroring, and halftones. Lots of fun stuff to go over here. So let's jump into the first one, which is repeating objects. So we'll click on this. We're going to take this here, and we're going to simply create a dotted line. Now, one of the first things I ever had to learn moving from Macromedia Freehand to Illustrator is, literally, I had never built a project in Illustrator. It was always freehand for 15 years. And then an agency in Portland, north of where I live, hired me to create a poster that was for Adobe. Well, of course, they just assumed I used Illustrator. And at the time, I hadn't fully made a switch yet, even though they had bought out Macromedia. And I said, yeah, I just didn't tell them. And then I went home, downloaded the latest version of Illustrator, and it was like baptism of fire over that next week. But the thing I couldn't figure out, and frankly, it's still unintuitive, is how do you create a dotted line in Illustrator? Well, let's go to the strokes palette, and I'll show you how. Right now, this is 11 strokes, but I want this to be a dotted line. So how do I do that? Well, we're going to click on dash line here like this. So you create a dotted line by creating a dash line, which you might be going, what does that have to do with anything? Well, just stick with me. How long do you want the dash? We want it 0. That seems really intuitive, right? Nope, doesn't seem intuitive at all. And then what gap do you want with a 0 dash? Well, we want to put it at 16 in this case, and this is what you're going to get. And you're going, well, that looks lousy. Well, that's because you want to go up here and choose round cap. So what it's doing is it's making a dash that has no distance, but it's putting a round cap on each side of that non-distance. And that's how you create a dashed line. Now, is this intuitive? No, I don't find this intuitive at all, but that's the way it works. So what we're going to do here, though, is once we have this established like this, I'll go ahead and grab the scissor tool because we're going to edit it. We're going to just cut it at 12 o'clock, and we'll cut it at 9 o'clock. And once we've done that, I'll take the rest and I'll throw it away. I'll select this now, and I'm going to go up to Uniform in the Control Panel. And if you don't have Control Panel turned on, go to Windows, make sure it's turned on, because this is where you can get a lot of shortcuts. In this case, we're going to use a profile, which is tapering, the first one, and we'll click on it. So now it goes from like small to big, back to small. That's kind of cool, but we have to expand this. So we're going to go ahead and expand appearance because it's just appearing that way. And so now it's just vector shapes. Let's go to appearance. You can see it's a group. So I'm going to go ahead and use my keyboard shortcut F7, turn it into a compound path. And then furthermore, I'm going to fill this with this nice kind of blend of color. Like that. That looks kind of cool. So how are we going to repeat this? Well, I'm going to select this now, and I'm going to go to Object. We'll go down to Repeat, and we'll go Radial. And you can see how it's kind of taking our design now, and it's kind of spinning it around this radial shape. If I can control it by adding more radial shapes like this, If I want to make it larger, I can increase it like that. And maybe we add even more. And this really gets to a cool kind of look and feel when you do add more like that. So I think that's kind of cool. I think on this one, if you double click into this, you can get back to your original shape. And on this one, I'm going to go to the gradient here. And I don't want this gradient to blend that way, so I'm going to flip it. So we'll flip it here, and I think that looks cool. So it's darker on the inside and it gets light on the outside. Now, to get out of this kind of isolation mode we're in, you can just hit the escape key and you'll get back to this. And then again, if you want it more complex, you could add more and more and more. I kind of like it with some space in between them, so something like that. So really cool way to repeat shapes, and you could do all kinds of things with this. It just depends on the context of what you're creating. So that's how you can repeat shapes. Let's go over some vector effects, and this is going to be utilizing the appearance panel. So I'm going to turn this on here, and let's go ahead and bring the appearance panel over here, because this is like layers, but we're going to be taking objects and applying it to those layers. Here's a bunch of elliptical shapes. We're going to select all of these, and we're going to go to Pathfinder, and we don't want to just click Unite. We want to go ahead and hold down the Option key, because you don't want to create a compound path. You want it to be what's considered a compound shape. So you want to hold Option down, and then click on Unite. And now if you look in the appearance panel, we have a compound shape. With that compound shape, we want to add some effects. So we're going to go to Effects, to Path, to Offset Path, and that'll bring up this control. And we'll just punch in some of our settings here. We want to do 22, and we want to make sure that the joins are round like that. The last number doesn't really matter. That's going to work fine, just like that. And then we're going to go OK. And so if we go under here, you can see we've added one effect to this. We're going to add another effect, and we're going to go Effect, and we'll add the exact same effect, offset path, open it up. And instead of 22, we're going to do minus 22. And then we're going to go select round. Now you might get an error message that says, hey, you're applying an effect to an effect. Just ignore that and click through it. I've done this before, so it's not showing me an error. If you do this for the first time, you will see an error. It's not going to blow up your machine or crash Illustrator. Just go ahead and click through it. And we're going to click OK. So this is the effect you get. If you direct select any of these shapes, notice how they'll kind of fuse. I call this cohesion. You can call it whatever you want. I think there's another movie on my YouTube channel where I downloaded a plugin that kind of does this. And for whatever reason, and growing up, I was diagnosed with light dyslexia. Well, that's showing up over the years at times. And I saw this plugin and I read it as meatball. Why did they call it meatball? Well, that's kind of, well, no, they didn't. They called it metaball. But for whatever reason, I was reading it as meatball. So in that video, I call it the meatball script that does it. And it's actually metaball. So that's just a nice little side story. So this is an effect you can get. So what would you use this for? Well, we're going to take this, and instead of walking through the exact same process, I'm going to go to Graphic Styles, and we're going to add it as a graphic style here. I'll double click on the graphic style. We'll call it Cohesion. Click OK. And now let's switch to another layer. We'll take this. I'll select these. Again, I'll go to Pathfinder. I'll hold Option down and click Unite. And now I can just go to the graphic styles. And this is why graphic styles is great. Once you create one resource, you can utilize it over and over. And I'm going to apply this graphic style to this one here. but they're not connecting. Why is that? It's because the space in between them is too great. So what we need to do is click into this, because this is just an effect being applied to it. And we're going to put 52 in here and click OK. And then we're going to do a minus 52 here, like that. And we'll click OK. And we're going to get something cool like that. So it's almost like a cohesion grid of sorts. So can you use this as a logo for a project? Well, you could, but you wouldn't want to deliver it with live effects. And this is what kind of surprised me. If I go to object, because all this is the 9 vector elliptical shapes. If we go to keyline view, you can see everything that we're also seeing in between them is just an effect. So we have to expand it. So we're going to go expand appearance. And I'm really surprised at how clean this expands it. I was like pleasantly surprised, because that's not always the case. So what can you do with something like this? Well, we could take this, we could go to material, 3D and materials like this. Maybe we go ahead and select inflate. We'll go ahead and click this to get a little more realistic adaptation of 3D rendering, and you could create some cool looking art like this. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but you could rotate this and you could adjust the lighting, adjust the shading and everything, but I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to show you that's one possibility you can do in Illustrator, which is kind of cool. What would you use this for? Maybe it's part of a branding project, and so it's just a secondary brand element that's rendered in 3D. Now, this is still a raster image, but it does create a really nice raster image of it. And if we go back to the appearance panel, I have a drop shadow turned off that I'll turn on, and you can get a cool look like that. So that's kind of fun. Let's jump to another one, which is vector halftones. And I'm going to go ahead and put my appearance panel back over here like that. And I want to show you how to create halftones. Now, right here, we have a gradient that if we go to the gradient tool, make sure you're on that. You can see it goes from black to white. You don't, using this methodology I'm going to show you, don't want to go from a complete black to a white. So this is where I would go ahead and let's go to the gradient palette. I would change this color. Oops, I didn't want to do that. This color here that's black, I'd select it, and I'm going to go up to color. And because it's a global color, I can create a tint. That's what T stands for in the color palette. And I'm going to tint this to about 75. So it's not a solid black like that. You know, maybe we'll even go to 70. We'll play it really safe like that. Why am I doing that? Because we want to create a halftone here. So if I select this, how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to go up to effects. We're going to go down to pixelate. We're going to go to color halftone. This is the size you want the dots, and on this size, creating these effects, we'll go 24 here. And then all of these, channel 1, 2, 3, and 4, think CMYK, because the original purpose of this was to create a color halftone. We're kind of using it not to create a color halftone, but we're going to create a black and white halftone. So we're going to put in all the same angles here, and that will ensure it's a black and white like that. And it'd be nice if there was a preview, but this shows how old this feature is. We'll click OK, and boom, we have that. Well, this is a raster image. It's just that gradient with a effect applied to that vector image. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and go to Window. We're going to go to Image Trace here. I'll bring up Image Trace because first we want to select this. We're going to go to Object, and we're going to go Expand Appearance. Now it's a raster image. So we're going to go under the image trace here. I'm going to click on Ignore Color White. I don't want anything in that image that's white to become vector shapes. And I'm going to pull this all the way to the right here and all the way to the left on noise. That means it's going to trace it as high as possible in terms of quality. And we're going to click Trace. Once it's done tracing, you'll have to go up here to the control panel and click Expand. And now you'll get vector-based artwork. Now you might think, well, that's cool. I didn't know that. But hold on, we're not done yet. Because if you zoom in on this, you know, it doesn't do such a great job. And that's where the next step is going to come in. But first, we want to go into these areas that are incomplete circular shapes like these. And we'll just delete them since they're vector now. And I'll just drag down all the way through these ones on the left side like this. And we'll delete those. These small ones, I don't think we need them. I'll delete those. And all the ones on the right side, I'll drag select all of those like this, and I'll get rid of all those. So all we have is complete shapes. The next thing, create a elliptical shape using the elliptical tool. We've done that here. I'm just going to copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Scripts, and we're going to go Replace Items. We want it to use the object in the buffer. Think clipboard. That's basically what we're doing. We want it to replace the items in the group. That's what we have selected. We want it to fit to the element size. It'll match this size of the image copied into the clipboard and match it to the size of the shapes, and it will align the symbol by the registration mark. And that's key because that means it'll replicate the exact position. And then we'll click OK. And it does what a computer does. It computes. And boom, you have absolutely perfect vector-based halftones that you can use in any project. And of course, you can colorize it whatever you want. We'll go ahead and just colorize these black like this. You can do the same thing with the elliptical shape like this. We'll go up to Effect. We'll go, let's see, do we want to use the same size? I think the same size would be fine. We can apply it like that. That's fine. We can go to Object. We can go to Expand Appearance like that. We can open up Image Trace, select the raster image. Make sure to turn on Ignore Color White because you don't want the background to become image traced. We'll pull the paths all the way to the right, noise all the way to left. We'll click Trace. Once it's traced, go up to the control bar, expand it. It'll create these shapes. Instead of using a perfect circle, we're going to use this cool little star shape. And I'll copy it to the clipboard, select our group, go to File, go to Scripts, go to Replace Items, all the same settings, click OK, and it will replace that, all those image traces with the star, and I think that looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and blow this up so you can see it better. So we'll go like this. Maybe we color it this nice kind of bluish color, and that's how you can create any kind of halftone, whether it's a circular shape, whether it's a star. You can use that however you want. Now, that color halftone feature in and of itself is really cool. And so if we select this and I go back to Effects and I go down to Pixelate and I go to Color Halftone, maybe this time I want the size to be 18. I want all of these to be 45, and I can click like that, and you can halftone an image within Illustrator, which is pretty cool. Now, if I select this, let's say I want to colorize this. I go over here, it'd look kind of cool if I colorize it red, and I click red. Well, it's not going to do anything. Why is that? It's because this is a JPEG. You can get the black looking image as shown here with the halftone, but you won't be able to colorize it. This is why I suggest you use grayscale TIFF images. So that's what this one is on the right. So if I go to Effect and I go down to Pixelate, I go to Color Halftone, we open up this one. I'll make this quite a bit smaller. We'll go 8, and then I'll click OK. Boom, it halftones this image. And maybe on this image, we want the original color, let's say it's red, or I'm sorry, a blue like this. So you can colorize it. That's the difference. Don't use JPEG, use grayscale TIFF images. You'll get a better result. If I go ahead and clone this, and this is the other thing you can do, if you use a grayscale TIFF image, if I clone this and I'm using my F3 key for keyboard shortcut, I'll color this a different color. I'll go ahead and scale it a little larger. I'll go to transparency and I'll go multiply. You can do all kinds of cool effects. This works great for creating kind of collage artwork and etc. So I just wanted to show you that because color halftone is kind of a fun feature to play with. And you don't have to use it the way the engineers intended you to use it years ago. Let's go ahead and talk about mirroring. So on this, I'm going to turn on this guide layer because I need to show you something. If I select this shape and I go to Object and I go down to Repeat and I go to Mirror, it's going to reflect this to the opposite side. Now we have some controls. This control will move it horizontally like this, and I bring it over to where this guide is, it's not going to want to snap. And that's the one part about this feature that's super frustrating, is you can't snap it to a guide. I don't know why. That's just the way they designed it. And if you want to mirror it, you can rotate this like that way, or you can go down to here and rotate this way, and it'll start to combine it. You can see how it combines the shape. But I'm going to point something out shortly. But let's say you want to take you can create the same way you create outside of this mirroring environment. You can select two anchors, hit the S key, and maybe you scale it down like this. You can see it's mirroring it on the other side. I might take this. If you clone something or copy it, you can create a mirrored shape like this. So if I go here and I snap it to that corner and I bring this one over here and snap it to that corner, then I can take this and I can mirror it down here, kind of like that. Maybe I want to take this one and colorize it differently. So I could colorize it like that. I think what I'm going to do is just leave it kind of like this. To get out of this mode, to get out of the mirroring mode, that is, you can just hit the escape key. That'll take you back back to the desktop, and then this is where if I select it, notice how it builds the artwork. Once again, it's just an effect applied to a vector image. So you'd have to go to Object and you'd have to go Expand like this, click it, and then you get access to the art. But look what it does. It like creates these no stroke, if I select these two, no stroke, no fill bounding boxes. Why does it do this? Because the engineers are sloppy. This doesn't need to be this way for whatever reason. This is the way they did it. So I'd select that and just delete them. You don't need them. It should be smart enough to build clean art. If I click into this, I can slide these over and then make sure it just snaps to the other side. I should be able to do all of that within this mirroring feature, but unfortunately, it won't work that way. So maybe I colorize it like this to create a nice kind of brand mark like that. And ultimately, I might utilize it in a branding project and create a pattern, and etc. from it. Now, if you want to see more about superior, in my opinion, mirroring abilities, check out Astute Graphics Mirror Me plugin, because it makes this one look like Fisher Price. It's just so much better, and it's precise, and it creates clean artwork. It doesn't mask it within shapes, which is highly annoying that that's the way it works in Adobe Illustrator's version of mirroring. So I just wanted to pull that out. Let's go ahead and jump to the last category. Let's go over the fifth and final category, and that's custom scripts. Now, I saved this for last because these are pretty fun. I collect scripts for Adobe Illustrator. There's a lot of coders out there that over the years have created some really cool scripts. I've collected pretty much all of them, and anytime I find out about a new one, I make sure to track it down to add it to my collection. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite ones. Some of these are really old, so let's dive into the very first one, which seems a little archaic, but I've been using this over 20 years and it still comes in handy at times. So I showed you previously how you can select 2 anchor points. You can hit the S key, and then if you grab the Bezier curves, you can make a squircle. So it allows you to distort like this. You could create, that's almost like a bread shape like that, or you could do it the other way, kind of like that. And that's kind of cool. Now, unfortunately, that functionality doesn't work when it's at an angle, and you think it would. You'd think, why do they assume that it only works on a 90 degrees? So if I select these 2 anchors and I hit the S key and I grab the Bezier curves, notice it's messed up. It just won't work at an angle. So how do I do this when something's at an angle? And is this something I do all the time? No, but when I have need for it, I still use the script. I'll select these 2 anchors like that. Then I'll go to File, I'll go to Script, I'll go to Extend Handles Script. It'll open up this and it says, how far do you want to extend it? Well, I don't want it 200%. I'll go 155 and I'll click OK, and it will honor the established angle and do that. So this is how I use it. And so I just wanted to show you that because not everything is super complex, but in this case, it does save me time when I need to do that. Let's jump to another one called Dupe at Selected Anchors. This one's super fun. So I'm going to select this artwork, and then I'm going to go to the lasso tool, and I'm going to lasso the ends of all of these branches, or I guess you'd call them branches on this plant. It's kind of like a house plant like that. And your selection doesn't need to be pretty with the lasso tool. You just want to select all those end anchor points. And with those selected, with the blossom selected, because I want to apply this blossom to the end of each one, I'll go File, Script, Dupe at Selected Anchors. Boom, it does it. Like that. And of course, we need leaves, so I'll turn on leaves like that. Now, is this something you're going to need to do all the time? No. And I'll be honest, I set up this artwork to demonstrate it. I always thought it was kind of magical. But I'll also be honest and say, I haven't used this one that much over the years, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't. I wanted to show it to you because I think it's cool, and there might be a context of use. Maybe you're creating some kind of repeat pattern or whatever. This might be good to do to use in that context. So I'm just showing it to you. You can use it however you want. Now, over the years, as I create design in illustration, and I move from Macromedia Freehand to Illustrator, in Macromedia, guides were not considered objects. They weren't considered part of the vector art. In Illustrator, they can be embedded in your art. Now, if you just want to purge all your guides and you don't care about them, well, that's pretty easy to do. You would just go up to, let's see, View, and you go down to Guides, and then you can go Clear Guides, and it'll just get rid of all the guides in your file. But there's many times when I'm working where I've established guides, like here, and they get embedded within the layers of my artwork or the group of elements in my artwork. So if I select this and I move it, you can see when I deselect it, those guides are following the artwork around wherever it goes. And if I try to copy and paste it into a new document, it'll often give me an error that says exceeds the bounding box or the artboard limit or whatever. So I kept running into this over the years, and I hired a programmer to write a script to me where I can just select the artwork when I have any guides that are embedded in it, and I'll just go to File, Script. This one's called GS, Move Guides to Layer. Click it, And what does it do? Well, it retains the guides, but it moves it to its own layer, so I can just toggle it off. I don't lose them. They're still there. They're still aligned to my artwork. They're just no longer embedded in my artwork. So I've always found that really helpful. You might find it helpful. That's why I showed it to you. Let's look at another one. This one's a newer one I found recently that I thought was brilliant, because whenever I wanted to stack type and make them the same length, regardless if they have the same amount of letters, I'd usually figure out the typeface I'm using, the font I'm using, and I would expand it, and then I would just visually snap it to the edge of one letter form on one word, to the other letter form on the other word, and I'd manually do it. Well, here's the great thing about this. I can select this, and if I want to stack it, I can just go to File, I can go Scripts, I can go down to Text Block. It's going to open up this information. It'll say, how wide do you want this text box? And I have 300 points is fine. And how much of a gap do you want in between them? Well, I think I want a 20-point gap like that, and click OK. Boom, look at this. It's still editable typography, but everything is stacked and aligned with the type below it. So this is awesome. This saves so much time. I can get to this point, save this, and maybe expand it from here and tweak anything I want to tweak. So a super really cool text block script that you might want to use. Let's jump to another one. So I have these elements, and maybe I want to fill this heart, like I love you to death is kind of what I'm thinking here is, and we don't want these to remain gray. I just did this so you could see it on the white background. We're going to actually color these white. I'm going to have those selected. I'm going to select the heart shape here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to File. I'm going to go to Scripts, and I'm going to go to one called Fillinger. And that's going to bring up this. And this is where you can just experiment and play. You know, maybe the max size you want is 10. The minimum size, maybe you want 3. Resize value, I don't know. Let's just punch in 55. And the minimum distance, let's just punch in a random number. And then the ones down below, since I have my heart on a different layer, I'm going to go ahead and select as in layers, so it's using the way I have my layers structured, and then group all items after executing. We'll click that on. And then the random items, if items in a group. Well, the items are, so you could click this on. This one we won't use, and we'll click OK. And boom, it puts everything in there randomly like that. Now, if you don't like what it comes up with, we'll go ahead and delete that. We'll select this. We'll go back to the script, go back to Fillinger, and you can just experiment. Just punch in numbers until you get the results that you think look better. So we're going to punch in a little different numbers, like 38, and I think we'll leave everything the same and click OK, and I like that a little better. And again, this is all randomized. This isn't artificial intelligence. So you could get a good starting place, and then you could just click into this group. Maybe you want this one bigger, you know, and then you can control the rotation. But it gives you a good starting point to create a design like that. Let's jump to the next one. I'm going to close this file. We don't need to save it. And this is a UPC generator that's a script, and it doesn't cost anything, so it works really great. Now, if you're going to use this, the script will be called, let's just view what that's called here. We'll go here, and you can see QR code. Well, also in the scripts file is a folder called includes, and this needs to be in there for this script to work. So I just wanted to point that out. All these are included in the exercise files. This is the area we want to place it on a label you might be designing. If I select this, this is 2 by 2 inches. So that's how big we want our QR code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to script. We'll click on QR. You have to give it the data. What URL do you want this QR to be based off of? And let's see, I'll go to, you'd think I would have my YouTube channel. You'd have the YouTube channel. I'll put in Glitchka Studios. There we go. You can check out my studios website. So glitchkastudios.com. You can put in all the other aspects you need. Oops, not that. Oh, can't type. www.glitchkastudios.com, and you can click OK. As soon as you click OK, it'll start generating the QR code, but it will create it in a separate new document. So just know that you're not doing anything wrong. This might take a little bit because it has to crunch the numbers and it has to create that vector-based QR code like this. So if you select this code now and group it, we'll go ahead and copy it. I'll close this file because we don't need it. I'll go back to this one, paste it. It's the size we want. We'll align it with our FPO here like that. Cut it. We don't need this. I'll delete it. And that's how you can get a QR code. And I'll go ahead and do this, and you can test this on screen. Just go ahead and take your, pause this video if you want to. You can take your phone out, and you can test this with your camera to see what it does. It'll take you to my website. And of course, you can punch in any URL you want for that. So kind of a cool one. I've been using this for years. And let's go ahead and close this. We'll jump to the next one. Now, Color Toner is unique because when you're creating variations of a base color, in this case, we have kind of a lime green and a dirty orange here. Color Toner will take your base color and it'll add percentages of black, determined on how many stages you want. It'll add percentages of white, and that'll create tints of that color. And so we'll start with the green here, and we'll just select it, go to Fill, go to Scripts, and we'll go Color Toner, the top one, like that. It'll open this up, and it says your base color is 55-0-100-0. That's fine. Tints. Mixing your base color with white. How many steps do you want it to show? We'll do 5. You can pick as many as you want. How much of variation between those steps do you want? And you could pick whatever percentage here. I might do, let's see, I don't know, 20%. Like that. In shades, mixing with black, we'll do the same amount, 5. We'll do the same amount of variation. And then tones, mixing color with gray. Now, I'll admit, I wish there was an ability like you had a check mark so you could go, I want tints, I want shades. I'm not going to check tones. You just have to include it. It'd be nice if they updated this to do that. But let's say variations, I think we'll do 10% shades of gray with the base color. And then default, do you want to show the color modes for RGB and CMYK? That's fine. You can include HSL if you wanted to. And then you can determine the size. Now, I'll admit, this size right here, if you look in the control panel, is 5" by 5". This is the part that I thought was a little odd. That's pretty large. Why can't I create smaller ones? For whatever reason, the smallest one you can create is 5 by 5. So just know that. You can always scale it down since vector art is resolution independent. And then offset. How much space do you want in between those? And if I put one here and one here, these will be inches. So we'll put 1 inch in between, and then options, add color legend, add to swatches. I usually don't want to add something to swatches until I absolutely know I'm going to use it, so I rarely use this. If you want to turn on add color legends, you can. In this case, I'm not going to do that. And this one does have a preview. So if I click preview, you can see what it's doing. It's adding all of those shades in there. So let's say I decide, okay, I'll add the color legend in here, and that gives you the information. Click OK. So now this gives you all that information. It breaks down the color based off of the settings. So we have the white one here where it's just changing 20% from one to the other, going left to right. This one, it's adding the black, and then the bottom one adding the gray. We'll do a little different on this one using the exact same script. We'll go to color toner. Instead of 20%, we're going to do 50% on these, so it's a little more obvious. And on this one, we'll do 50 as well. Keep all the same settings. You can preview it, but in this case, we'll just click OK. And now you can get all those various settings. So this is more if you're doing, you need variations of the same colors, or maybe it's a family of colors, and you want to have compatible or secondary colors. This is a good script to use for that. So let's go ahead and close this. And I want to show you the final one, which is my favorite. Maybe you develop a brand mark kind of like this. If you go to your swatches palette and you select your swatches that are used in that, then you go to scripts and you go down to render swatch legend. Then you can pick what modes of color you want. I definitely want it to have, now one thing I should point out, our file is CMYK. So it's going to establish that already. So I technically don't need to select CMYK. That'll show up automatically. But I also select CMYK because I'll show you why afterwards. And I want to show RGB. Hex would be great. I don't care about gray or lab. Separators are if you just, you have your, what is it called? If I have it turned off by default. If you go into Illustrator and you go under preferences, I have show tooltips turned off. If you have tooltips turned on, it'll explain what these are. It's not showing up here because I have that turned off. This one should have type here, but for whatever reason, they didn't put it. And type size, I'll just say 12. Now, what font is it using? Well, you don't get to pick that. It'll just use a default system font that you have turned on. With all these set, we'll click OK, and boom, you get a really nice swatch legend. Now, because we're in a CMYK file, it created CMYK here at the top, and this is where I'll go in and I'll name this whatever I want. Maybe this one I'm calling red-handed, and I'll also go ahead and select this, and I'll go here and I'll turn it to a bold just to give it a title for each color, or like that, so on, so forth. Again, change it to a bold. So it'll duplicate CMYK, but this way you have a way you can name the color. And if it's for a brand, I like naming the brand colors, not just red or yellow, but kind of giving it a context with what the brand's all about. Makes it more memorable, etc. So I just wanted to show you that. It's called Render Swatch Legend. By the way, I just noticed I had all of these with a stroke on it. We just remove that stroke, and that looks even better like that. So Render Swatch Legend, a great script for Adobe Illustrator. I covered a lot of information in this week's content, but I always try to use this type of workflow within the creative process on everything I create. And when I can combine functionality and features and tools and plugins and scripts, it just makes the process so much easier. Again, I encourage you to download the free trial of Astute Graphics and try their plugins for Adobe Illustrator, which are absolutely amazing and time-saving and well worth the investment. For a subscription, it's about $120 for a year, but if you divide that by how much time you're going to save, it's a no-brainer, and you can write it off on your taxes. I've included their information in the exercise files for this movie. If you like this channel, please subscribe, give the movie a simple like, comment on my content, share it, or even better yet, become a member. Any of these things improves the reach of my channel so more people can benefit from it. Until next time, thank you for watching People of Process. And as always, I really do hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.